Committee on Rules and Administration will come to order. Today is Thursday, June 16th, and we have a quorum present. Members, welcome. I hope that you've all had a chance to reconnect in your districts and are having a good interim and a good summer. On our agenda today, we have the Senate employee staff roster, along with a few human resource items affecting staff, as well as the interim travel expenses and per diem memo for members. The first item on our agenda is approval of the Senate employee staff roster. You should have all received that via email yesterday with the roster. The roster includes all permanent Senate staff positions. I will have Secretary Ludeman walk us through the roster and then open it up for discussion and questions. Secretary Ludeman, can you please provide us information on the staff roster?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it, and welcome back to senators as well and other staff that are helping us during this discussion. The roster is a sort of an annual event. I need to tell you, Mr. Chairman and members, that I've never been more confident that this roster represents an employee market-centered representation of compensation. As you will recall, some of you will recall, at least since the NCSL compensation study, which led to some significant changes in assignment of ranges of positions in 2019. That was a dramatic change in how we pay our employees, not specifically to any one employee, but it rearranged some of the range assignments of those positions. Each position now in 2022 is backed with a position description. It drives any posting requirement for any new hire, any performance review that takes place and needs to take place, and any range reassignment of positions, which might become before the MAC, what we call the MAC, the Management Advisory Committee, which is the two chiefs of staff, the council and HR director and myself. And that does not happen. It happens very seldom of late because of our confidence of the right assignment of range. The incumbents listed on this roster know their job. They do it well, and they're professionals in their work. They are often recognized by senators, Senate leaders, and any observer of the Senate business. You will note that some very few exact same salaries, and I want to address that on this roster. These are not inequities. These are differences that are driven by the way we hire and the way we do business. Most of those differences are due to longevity or experience-rated hiring. In other words, people with more experience in a relevant job are given some credit for that. Also, the differences may be by merit increases. Some employees receive more merit pay than others, and by starting salary differential. It does depend on when you started and at what salary you started at. That may show up as a difference between you and someone that you think is in an equal job. And so those salaries are pretty exact, and we're very confident that they're based on the market to be able to retain and recruit employees for the Senate. All that said, Mr. Chairman, this roster is our yearly presentation of the public document that we will continue to use during this year for information about the general Senate staff salaries. Other compensation issues which are specific to one person are certainly public information, but we desire that discussion about any one salary is not a discussion that we would necessarily have today, but I would certainly be able to answer any general questions about the Senate roster of about 206 Senate employees, permanent employees. There is another 32 to 35 employees, which we call session only or temporary employees, who are not on this roster, but certainly paid for out of the Senate budget. This roster is also, I want you to know, is a snapshot. It's a one-day take of who is currently employed. You may notice some people who are already on their way toward retirement quickly. Some may have already accomplished in the last several days, but it's a snapshot of June 7th, which will be the roster for all calculations of merit pay pools, for example, and how we represent it as a public document to the rest of the world. But I'd certainly stand for any questions that you may have, Mr. Chairman, or any other member.
Members, do you have any questions on the roster for Secretary Ludeman? Keeping in mind, you should keep your questions and comments general in nature, not directed toward any individual employee or salary or position. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question on that. So are these funds already allocated to the Senate through our appropriation last year in the 2021 session? And this would be just allocating those funds from that appropriation then? Is that how this mechanism works?
Secretary Ludeman.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Johnson, this represents the current salaries of Senate employees, which are fully paid for out of the line item appropriation, plus a lot of other expenses that we have too. But the permanent salary line is certainly paid for out of the fiscal year 2022 appropriation. In a few moments, we'll have a discussion about further compensation for employees as we approach the 2023 fiscal year, and I will discuss how although that compensation is paid for at that time. But yes, this is a fully paid for compensation salary that you see on this roster.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions, members? Seeing none, Senator Osmick, if you're willing to do so, would you move the approval of the Minnesota Senate staff roster dated June 7th, 2022?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
On that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The Senate staff roster is approved. We will continue with Secretary Ludeman for the next couple agenda items. You should have received two documents. One is outlined the Senate compensation recommendations for fiscal year 2023, as well as 2022 merit-based compensation plan for Senate employees. Secretary Ludeman, can you please walk us through the resolution and the two supporting documents you and your staff have provided?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Members, I think you have in front of you a resolution which triggers a compensation plan that we have worked on. This is the work of our HR director, Nicole Miner, our controller, Senate controller, Betty Myers, and our budget officer is Wendy Dwyer Bagley, working together to make sure we have affordable compensation plan and one that continues to be market-based so that we can keep and retain the good employees that we currently have. I know that Nicole, our HR director, and Betty Myers, our controller, are on this Zoom meeting for any additional information that they might be able to answer of questions that you may have. In basic form, this is, I need to remind you a little bit where the Rules Committee was. After we did that major change in 2019 of those range assignments, we had longevity pay, we had a COLA, and we had a merit pay. At the same time, we got into COVID world, and so in 2020, we didn't do anything about compensation enhancement of any kind. And then last year in 2021, we did a retroactive 3% COLA back to July 1 of 2020. So we caught up a little bit from what didn't happen in the calendar year 2020. And then we did a 3% merit pay in fiscal year 2020, but chose not to do a COLA at the same time. And we did not do anything about what we would do today. In other words, we didn't put a COLA in place in policy in last year. So I just wanted you to understand all of that. So what we're doing today is brand new. It's we've kind of cleared the deck, so to speak, on our compensation arrangements. That's all now represented in that roster that you just approved. And so now what do we want to do for staff compensation in fiscal year 23? We're proposing a 3% COLA. That's a cost of living adjustment for all current Senate permanent staff. This would be effective then July 1 of 2022. And I think you've got some other cost documents in front of you, members and Mr. Chair. This cost of this COLA approximately in the next fiscal year would be $438,000. I'm going to answer Senator Johnson's question again. I guess for the 2023 answer is this amount of money is fully paid for through the appropriation for 2023. In other words, our appropriation for this year is greater than it was last year, and that whole difference represented in that line item is about this issue. So this 3% COLA is fully paid for. We're also recommending a calculation of a 1% merit pool. This is very similar to what we did last year for the merit pay. We're going to get into some details if you wish, and I will have Nicole Miner discuss how that is implemented. This is also a proposal that we think is affordable within our current budget, even in the current permanent salary line, based on anticipated savings that will incur for two reasons. Potential retirements that might take place and the savings that may be afforded because of that, and the effect of other separations which may take place while at the same time we have a imposed hiring freeze. Mr. Chairman, you know that you have instituted a hiring freeze come this Friday, I believe, or tomorrow, and that hiring freeze will give us a fairly substantial amount of employee compensation savings over the next 6 or 7 months, of which you will determine how long that freeze needs to stay on. In other words, someone separates for any good reason or bad reason, we don't hire back, and so then we start to accumulate certain savings. We think that will be adequate by our history and our calculations to pay for that 1% merit pay. I'm also relatively confident that the third item of what we're trying to do is add a $600 lump sum payment to all employees immediately. In other words, for the July 1st payment. That doesn't mean quite this next payroll, but for whatever day you are getting paid for July 1st, you would have an additional $600. Let's call this inflation bonus, or whatever you want to call it, Mr. Chair, or members of the Rules Committee. I'm all for, and I believe this will fit in to some of those savings that we have. And if it doesn't, it will certainly be paid for out of what we call the temporary employment line in our state, in our Senate budget. And I have every confidence that when this cost of $125,000 is paid for, it would certainly fall under the total of our Senate budget for 22 and 23. So it's not larger than $600, because then my confidence that it would fall under our budget restraints I start to get a little hesitant, but I think it's a good idea for people who are paying a lot more for their gas or their food to have that cash in their hand as fast as we can get it, so that we don't lose anybody for any of those reasons. The rest of the salary that we're talking about, of course, is paid incrementally every 2 weeks on a paycheck. And so that's the sum of the proposal. You've seen the cost figures of the total cost of $709,000. Even if what I said about the temporary salary line or the savings that we accumulate, I will also remind you that a lump sum payment can also certainly be paid for out of what is called a our reserves or our carry forward is off the budget term for it, and which is fairly substantial yet. And while I'm spending, just for your information, Mr. Chair, and as you and Senator Leader Lopez Franza know, about 1.4 million of that on technology enhancements. That money is also available for this lump sum payment. It's been done in the past. Senator Bach well knows that lump sum payments have been made in the past, and sometimes it was even made in combination with a salary enhancement as well, although that was not large. And but the lump sum payment was substantially more than $600 at the time as well, and it's been done several times. None of this adds up to the 8.5% inflation numbers that are going around, Mr. Chair and members, but we think it's a satisfactory, a good salary increase for our current employees, and we think it will help us keep their employment with the state Senate. If you want more details about the merit pay, Nicole Miner is ready to give you more details on the operational details about how that's calculated, but she has been very good at providing us with all these position descriptions, performance appraisals, which are in our current Senate policy, and it was Betty Myers and Wendy Dwyer Begley who were supposed to find us the money to be able to accomplish some reward for a positive merit pay performance appraisal. That's what I got, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you, Secretary Ludeman. We have a couple questions. Senator Rest. Senator Rest, you're still on mute.
There we go. I can't hear you.
Thank you.
There you go.
I'm curious about what is the base amount that these other amounts are added to, and do any of these numbers for fiscal year 23, or which ones of them become part of the base salary that when we a year from now undertake a review of salary adjustments, which ones are included and which ones are not? If you could just go down the list, that would be very helpful, I think, to us of what we can tell our employees, our LAs in particular for members, what's going to become part of their base. Can you do that, Mr. Secretary?
I can. Mr. Chairman and Senator Rest, that's a very good question. I think if we just review the appropriation, and this will be confirmed by the expenditures report that members of the Rules Committee get every quarter, we are right on track on the permanent salary line up to this point in nearing the first day of fiscal year 23. So the base amount, we will then achieve a new base amount. Exact number is, I got too many. Here it is. So our appropriation, as I said a little earlier, we're right on track for our current expenditure in 2022 of let's just say 15,283,000 plus the 2023, of which is affording the cost of this COLA, the 3% COLA, which is also the answer to your last question, Senator Rest. That will be the base, and that would be that $15,742,192. So that would be the base of which, and so that 3% COLA is the base salary which we would start working for, even as we approach the Finance Committee about an appropriation going into next biennium.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and Secretary Ludeman, so the one-time lump sum payment, that will not go into the base.
That's correct.
I just want to make sure. And none of the merit raises will go in, just into the base. That's kind of like bonuses in a way, some for merit and some just because we're recognizing inflationary pressures. But what they get from this, what they get at the base that is determined, that is what would be the base plus the 3% COLA. That is the base that would be undertaken in a review going forward in 2023 for the next fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Secretary Ludeman.
Okay,
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. That's important to understand and for our employees to understand
It is.
where they're going to start out from this time next year. Thank you.
Senator Bach.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ludeman, previously when we've done these one-time stipends, we always looked back and looked at a higher date. And if my memory is correct, we went back and said, in order to be eligible for the stipend, you had to be in employment in the Senate prior to March 1st of this year. And really has been kind of a recognition of previous service in the Senate. Do we have anything in place relative to that for these, just so that people know if somebody got hired in May, I want them to know that they're not going to get it or they are going to get it. Have you contemplated that? I believe we've used March 1st in the past.
Secretary Ludeman.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Bach, I may need a little help here a little bit. I do know that the merit pay increase is triggered by the March 1st hire date. In other words, anybody hired after March 1st would not be eligible. We wouldn't have enough experience to do a legitimate performance appraisal to receive that. The $600 issue, for example, I may need a little help, or I guess I'll defer that answer till some contemplation, but I think that would be our intent as well, that the $600, I think I told you out loud that it was for all employees, and I don't know if we've got a significant, I know we don't have a significant number here of anybody that was hired after March 1st. It'd be a very low number. And to be fair to them and to the rest of the employees, I'm going to defer that answer. But I appreciate you asking it, because I don't think it says explicitly in the plan.
Looks like Mr. Bodden had something to say.
Maybe Mr. Bodden can help me.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Secretary, and I'll defer to the Director of Human Resources, Ms. Minor, as well. With reference to the one-time salary stipend, the way that is worded in the resolution would make it available to any current Senate employee employed as of July 1st, 2022. Certainly, if you want to clarify that, that date could be changed, but there's no other provision for backdating that in any way anywhere else.
Senator Bach.
Well, I just bring it up for the sake of conversation, and we've got a number of people retiring because of the way the state pension fund is working on or before June 30th, or maybe they've already retired this month, might have been with us for a long time. Are they then not eligible, Mr. Botter?
Mr. Botter.
So, Mr. Chairman and Senator Bach, yeah, the way this is written, it's intended to refer to each Senate employee employed on July 1st. So if they retire June 30th, they would not be eligible. That's correct.
Yeah.
Senator Bach.
No, well, that's fine. I just want it to be clear to people that are watching.
Yeah.
If that's our intent.
Any other comments? I did get a note just for clarity, Mr. Ludeman or Ms. Minor or Mr. Bodden. I'm being told that merit pay is included in a staffer's base salary.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for bringing that up. And I was going to correct that for Senator Rest. The 1% is a compensation, permanent increase in compensation. So that would be part of the base going into, as we relate to that employee. So that is their base employee. We would not take away the 1 or the 0.75 or the 1.5% of merit pay for any reason. So that would be part of their base pay. I was thinking about the base appropriation for the state Senate.
Okay, good. Thank you for that clarification. Members, any other questions? Seeing none, Senator Newman, if you would offer the motion that committee resolution 5-7 be adopted. Maybe not. Senator Limmer?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
All right, Senator Limmer moves that the motion committee resolution 5-7 be adopted. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Ludeman. The next item is Committee Resolution 6, which provides for the Senate contribution to the Employee Deferred Compensation Program. Senator Gazelka increased our current rate in 2017, and it has remained the same since then. I'll again ask Secretary Ludeman to walk us through this resolution and then respond to questions. Secretary Ludeman.
Mr. Chair and members, this is pretty simple. It's actually a continuation of our policy. There has been a few, I know Senator Bach reinstituted it, and then we, like you said, it was finally then increased a little bit to 1,100, a little bit, but considerably more than the other legislative body. And so we think it's a fair match of compensation, of deferred compensation for Senate employees. Not everybody gets to use it. We encourage it actively amongst all employees to defer some compensation for tax deferral purposes. And it's certainly good for them in the long run, but we have to do a lot of convincing. Our controller, Betty Myers, has been very instrumental in getting a lot more enrollment in the deferred comp plan. And so getting that match at $1,150 is a continuation of our current policy. We did do last year a little bit of a double up opportunity as a benefit to our employees, but that is over. That had to be implemented by December 31st. So this is going into the next fiscal year, a one-time chance to match $1,150 of a deferred compensation. Which
Question.
is managed, by the way, by MSRS.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real quick question of ballpark of how many employees do use the deferred comp at some level or to at least that level?
I'm going to have, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I'll have Betty Myers go live and maybe answer approximate question or approximate answer for a good question.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Marty, right now, it is about 75% of our employees use it. This past year with the doubling up was the first time we came close and a little bit beyond the budget we put for full usage of that match because of the vacation time. But we have about a 75% rate of usage.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Rest, would you be willing to offer the motion that Committee Resolution 6 be adopted?
I move we adopt resolution number 6.
All right. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. The motion prevails. The motion is adopted. All right. Next on our agenda is the interim travel expenses and per diem. We approve this memo every year with minimal changes because we are in the middle of an election year. Members' constituent service miles will be suspended after today for any members who file for office. Other than that, I believe it is the same as it has been for several years or longer. Are there any questions on the travel expenses and per diem? All right, seeing none, Senator Bach, would you offer the motion that the interim travel expenses and per diem be approved?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
All right, on that motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion prevails. Next up on our agenda is a status report on the Senate non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy. I'd like to ask Nicole Miner, our Director of Human Resources and a member of the NDAH Working Group, to provide us with a brief update. Ms. Miner, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to report that the Senate Non-Discrimination and Anti-Harassment Policy Working Group met this morning to review the latest draft of changes to the policy. We only have about 1 or 2 items remaining to finalize, and the working group expects to have that taken care of next week. Final recommendations should be to the committee by June 24th, 2022, as required by the resolution adopted by the Rules Committee. Again, we have a tentative date set for Tuesday, June 21st. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miner, and thanks to all who are serving on the working group. We look forward to receiving your report with recommendations and meeting as a group to discuss them in the next couple weeks. We are now moving on to other business, and I understand that Senator Frentz has a proposal to amend our Senate Policy Handbook. Senator Frentz, please let us know what you are proposing, and then we'll open it up to members for questions or comments.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Rules Committee members, I'm proposing that we amend the paid holiday portion of the Senate Policy Handbook. First of all, I had considered asking Mr. Boddern to confirm that we are essentially imbued with the authority to do so if we choose to. What I am proposing is to add Juneteenth to the paid Senate holidays, and that would be of no cost to the Senate. We would simply be allowing staff to have that holiday. Before I talk about the way the holiday would be identified, I just want to say thank you to all the members of this committee who reached out informally to discuss it. If there is opposition to this, I have not heard it yet, but just for the point of review, the Black communities have been celebrating Juneteenth for 156 years. If the Minnesota Senate makes this a paid holiday, I think it takes exactly the right kind of step that we want to take as a body. I think it tells our staff and their families that they can celebrate this if they choose. And that will be providing an opportunity to recognize not only where we've been, but where we're going. Our nation's had enslavement, and that allows some families to celebrate Juneteenth in their own way. It also signals that we as the Senate recognize our desire to do better. I think of all the things we've talked about in the Senate in my years, that's something we can all get behind. This is the step that I propose to change in the handbook, and this is 2.42, Mr. Chair. There was a bit of discussion, should the members be supportive about how to identify which of the days would be the paid holiday. The way this is written right now, it would be the 19th of June, but if the 19th of June falls on a Saturday, that would be celebrated or observed on a Friday. And if it falls on a Sunday, that would be celebrated on a Monday. Otherwise, it would fall on the day of the 19th. And I'm open-minded to suggestions. I would note on the question of which day it might be that for the next 2 calendar years, it would make no difference. The way that the rule is written in 2.42 would fall in the same, whether we make it a 3-day weekend or whether we have it there. And I want to just add, in addition to the many people who've put in work on this issue, that Senator Bobby Joe Champion, who authored a bill in the Senate to recognize Juneteenth, and I spoke. And he offers his support not only for this, but to members who are supportive of it. We, again, would be telling our staff that this would be a paid Senate holiday. I personally, and as the member of the Senate, think this would be a great step. And it would be a bipartisan step, Mr. Chair, at a time when I think the state of Minnesota might like that kind of signal from us on something, never mind the staff of the Minnesota Senate. And for all the reasons that members have discussed, the good things we do for our staff, I hope members will consider adopting this resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And members, my understanding is Senator Frentz intends to offer this language as an amendment to our Senate Policy Handbook. And if it is adopted, it would be effective immediately. Are there any questions for Senator Frentz? Senator Bach?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question, I guess, of Mr. Boddern. You know, the majority leader has the authority to move holidays around. I mean, we do that for Christmas and for New Year's. Does majority, if we adopt this as it's written, if let's say June 19th fell on a Tuesday, does the majority leader have any authority to move it to Monday rather than observe it on Tuesday? Or are we locked in at a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday?
Mr. Bach.
Mr. Chairman, and Senator Bach, I think the answer is the way the policy is written now would define the day the holiday must occur. There is some provision within the LCC benefit book for employees who are, for one reason or another, required to work on a paid holiday and are allowed the flexibility to move that time to another date on the calendar. That would be the limit of the flexibility. This would work the same way that the holidays that are declared in the legislative plan for employee benefits would work.
Well,
Senator
well,
Bach.
Mr. Chairman, I raise it just because I'd be interested in knowing what staff think, right? I mean, I want this to be as beneficial as it can be to all of the staff in the Senate. And I just wonder if picking a Monday in June might be more preferable to the staff than actually picking a hard date, or pick the hard day or a floating holiday that the staff person chooses. Just kind of thinking out loud here. And I understand, Senator Frantz, that over the next 2 years, it doesn't matter. It'll fall on a long weekend. But to most families, I think a day off in the middle of the week isn't that family friendly as being able to turn it into a longer weekend where they can do something together. Just thinking out loud. I'm sure open to comment about it. I don't have a amendment proposed, but I'm just curious how staff might view it.
My guess is Senator Frantz's intent is for people to celebrate the holiday on the actual day, but I don't want to speak for you. So Senator Frantz and then Senator Rest.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Senator Bach. I appreciated your input earlier today. I called as many people as I could, and here was what I came up with. There was sentiment to have it this way in alignment with the federal holiday. There are some families for whom they would like to celebrate Juneteenth on the day of Juneteenth. And to the extent that those families might have other celebrations they want to attend, it might be easier. Nobody likes a 3-day weekend more than I do, and that is a scientific fact. But I do recognize that what the proponents of this, a change to our handbook, want is to see it recognized. And to Senator Bach's point, I'm sure Senator Champion, I, and others would be very open-minded to further discussion. Part of what we're hoping is not only to send the signal, but to allow the holiday to be paid this year, which we can do by passing this and agreeing to continue discussions. Thank you.
Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up on Senator Bach's point of reaching out to our Senate employees about which date would be the most meaningful for them to participate in activities commemorating what is a very historic date that we know from the activities in Galveston over 150 years ago. And I think that if we adopt the resolution as it is, we would be able, Senator Bach, to get that feedback after this year, to have a, informal survey, or members could do it of their employees. Which would you prefer? Commemorating it on the historic date, or finding another way of commemorating it with a 3-day weekend and perhaps some less formal observance on Juneteenth itself. As Senator Frantz pointed out, that's not an issue right now, but we would have plenty of time between now and next year this time to gather the feedback that would be helpful and what would really work for the families of Senate employees.
Well, I think you're right, Senator Rest, and I would encourage that. I won't be here next year on the Rules Committee, but I would encourage people to take the input of staff and so that it works best for them and their families. And we do have some additional floating holidays in the employee manual, I believe. So if it did end up on a Monday and people still wanted to observe the 19th, they certainly could by using one of their floating holidays. Maybe they could put a 4 or 5 day weekend together.
There you go.
It sounds like there's an openness to continue those discussions. Senator Frantz, do you have the motion, or Mr. Bodern?
I have spoken with Mr. Botter about it and asked our legislative director. I believe I'm asking the committee to approve an amendment to the Senate handbook. And so to the extent that is a resolution or an amendment, I defer to Mr. Botter what the right terminology is. I've only been in the Senate 6 years.
I have it in front of me, but if Mr. Bodern has it, I'd like him to read the motion.
Mr. Chairman, and boy, I hope I get it right in comparison with what you have in front of you, but it's sufficient for the committee to adopt proposed Senate Policy 2.42.
Mr. Chairman,
All right, Senator Russ.
thank you. Maybe not as part of the motion, but that we understand that it would be effective in calendar year 2022. So it would be effective this coming Monday, and that the Senate would find a way through an email or such to alert employees of the decision reached by the Rules Committee today.
All right, so Senator Frantz moves to amend the Senate Policy Handbook by inserting the following: 2.42 additional paid holiday. In addition to the observed paid holidays provided under the Legislative Coordinating Commission Plan for employee benefits, the following day is observed as a paid holiday for Senate employees: Juneteenth Day, June 19th. If Juneteenth falls on a Saturday, it will be observed on the prior Friday. If it falls on a Sunday, it will be observed on the succeeding Monday. Senator Frantz, is that your motion?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. On the Frantz motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion prevails. The motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Thanks in advance to our fiscal department, who will be busy getting this set up for an additional paid holiday for our staff on this coming Monday. So thank you for all your efforts to get that done. Let's see here. Next, I gotta go to a different sheet here. Senator Marty, I understand, also has a proposal for our Senate Policy Handbook. Senator Marty, please let us know what you're proposing, and then we'll open it up for questions.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. The Senate employee policy for compensatory time is right now one that you have to work 85 hours in a 2-week pay period, where it would normally be 80 hours of paid work. In a regular period, you have to work 85 hours before you start receiving an hour of comp time for every hour worked. So in effect, and on the pay thing, I'm sure it wasn't intended this way, but it says it fairly accurately. It's labeled under the category work, not paid, which is what it is. And I think I raised this back in April, and you agreed it would be better to discuss it at this meeting. So I'm bringing it up again. And the issue is here, I think we all recognize that highly paid salaried employees are often in many jobs, including certainly at the Capitol, required to put in extra time without compensation. But again, a lot of the workers here, I think I looked at the last year's chart, and it looked like about 2/3 or more of our Senate employees are making $70,000 or less in a year. And that's not what's typically envisioned by a salaried person who works overtime, unpaid overtime, to accomplish their already well-compensated work. And these are not, especially most of the Senate employees are not highly compensated employees. And we're not asking that they get time and a half for overtime or actually any extra compensation for it, only that they can take an equivalent time off if they're able to accomplish their work during the year within that standard 40-hour work week averaged over the year. And I think that, in other words, we recognize that everybody in the Senate is not getting paid more for working overtime. They are allowed to make up for it the rest of the year and have a lighter schedule in the summer or fall if they're working longer during the session. And this, again, like The last proposal that we just adopted does not cost the Senate budget anything, not directly anyway, because we're not paying people more. We're simply saying, if you work 90 hours in a week, in a 2-week period during session, you'll have 10 hours of quote extra time that you're going to get compensated for. Again, not on a time and a half kind of scale, but just at the same rate. You can take the time off elsewhere. So you're still working the 40-hour weeks. So I encourage your support for this. I know the language on the pay sheet may not be intending to send that message, but I think our employees, and I think if you talk with them, you'll hear from many who this is a little bit of a sore point, because in a typical session this year, the short session, I think there were 18 weeks of it. And if somebody is working if they're earning comp time every 2-week period, that means they're putting in more than a week of total pay, 45 hours in that 18-week period that would be uncompensated. And so in effect, we're asking them to put in a week a year, more than a week a year beyond what they're paid for before they get any compensated time for overtime. And so I would ask us to recognize that I think this is a fairness issue. And again, for the higher level employees, I think there's more of an expectation of this, but people who are making $60,000 a year, I don't think that's what we think of when we think of highly compensated professional salaried employees. And they may be very skilled and very talented and doing very important work, but they're not highly paid. So I ask that we at least take out this thing and let them get the benefit of those hours they worked and do get the compensation for it by taking time off later. And I ask for your support for this. And there is I think Mr. Bodern prepared the thing, and I think it was distributed to say, just delete in the employee handbook, those who exceed 85 hours per pay period are eligible for comp time, change it to 80 hours. And I'm happy to take questions.
Senator Bach.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Marty, I remember when this was 88, not 85. But Mr. Ludeman, my question is, what are the Senate's hours that were open for business? So a legislative assistant is expected to staff the office during what hours of the day? And is it different during the session than during the interim?
Secretary Ludeman.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Bach, that's a great question. I think this, and Senator Marty, you know that you and I have talked at least briefly about this issue as well. There's 2 issues, and one of them is the one you identified, Senator Bach. Our expectation of office hours or building hours where a public can have access to people, not just a place, is during session. It's 8 to 5. And when it's interim right now, those kind of hours are 8 to 4:30. So there is a half-hour differential. I think everybody can do the math. That half-hour times 10 days is 5 hours. And so that's, I don't know if that's the historical interpretation where these 5 hours of used to be called unpaid time. It was never even contemplated as 80 or not. It was just unpaid time and had no comp time component at its origin. So the comp time was invented as a way to pay for employees with time, not money. Because we're certainly, if we were under FSLA, we would be all exempt employees. And the other issue that Senator Marty's testing here is salary versus hourly employees. Even though I'm over answering your question, Senator Bach, I'll stop here. But I think you're going to. So yeah, there is a difference in time expectation.
I guess to your point is so during the interim, if the office is open for 8.5 hours, is that considered 8.5 hours on the time card, or is it considered 8? Or is 8.5 hours considered part of their salary?
No, it's 8 hours year round is the expectation of timesheet work. That other 5 hours, for example, of that open office thing is where that work not paid. It used to be called unpaid work. I don't know if there's a language difference in that, but it's called work not paid in our payroll system, which exists on an hourly basis only to be able to account for accrued vacation time and sick leave for employees. It's senators don't go into our payroll work time or worksheet system, but that's why that 5 hours exists there. So, but if the system were to populate your hours, it would always populate it at 8 hours year round per day.
So I guess
when you're hired, there's an expectation that if coverage is important in a certain area of the Senate or all areas of the Senate, it has got that extra half hour component to it.
So my question kind of is, as supervisors sign off on timesheets, if somebody's in the office from 8 to 4:30, do you put down 8 hours on the timesheet or do you put down 8.5?
Secretary Ludeman.
Mr. Chairman, it depends on the employee believing and with the help of the supervisor believing that they are actually at work for that 8 hours. If that half hour was secured in a conference room to eat lunch or wherever that might happen, or for an hour, it's 8 if it's 8, and it's 8.5 if it's 8.5. But if you do it every day, that half is calculated as work not paid. But most employees work considerably more than that during session. And so they do accumulate comp time. It's because all those extra hours then are what comp time is, which is hour by hour. It used to not be hour by hour. At one time it was 2 hours worked to gain 1 hour of comp time. Then it was an hour and a half. And now it's hour. And we've also raised overtime, as you probably know, when you were a senator, but staff at one time could accumulate up to 160 hours of comp time. Then it was 180, 200, and now we're at 220 hours is the cap of accumulated comp time going into an interim. Remember, senators, if you all know, you can only accumulate comp time during the session, and you can only use comp time during the interim. Just so we all understand that as well.
Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to inquire, yes, during session, they have basically a 9-hour day from 8 to 5, but like any other place of employment, do we typically figure a half hour for lunch and 15-minute breaks in the morning and afternoon? And we all recognize schedules aren't that specific in the Senate, but many days they do get that in. So, how do we accommodate that, at the end of the day? Because their supervisor can't always be aware of that time either. So.
Mr. Ludeman.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Senator Weber, like many places, and I've been in public and private sector, either as an employee and as a manager and a supervisor, where I was reliant on a high level of trust that the employee puts down hours that they worked, and the supervisor generally accedes to that number. And I don't want to I'm trying to not characterize the 5 hours that Senator Marty is talking about as casual hours, but it is a cushion of hours of time spent probably at the Senate where this employee doesn't have a choice. They're going to be in the MSB or the Capitol during that period of time, whether they have lunch or not. And so, and when they're hired, they're expected to be there for a certain amount of time. And during session, it's that extra half hour as well, which is 9 hours, not 8.5 or 8, actually. My calculator says 8 to 5 is actually an hour, 9-hour event, but you may or may not be working during that extra hour at that time. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the whole thing relies on trust. Otherwise, time clocks and time sheets for salaried employees is something we really don't want to do, but we do it because we want to be able to them to accrue vacation and sick time.
Senator Weber, any further questions?
Well, I guess I would just simply say that, I look at the extra hours. Sometimes, obviously, we go late in the afternoon or into the evening, and sometimes we have our staff on hand. Sometimes we don't. That depends sometimes what we as individual senators wish to have from our staff, particularly if we have a bill that's up or our committee or whatever the case might be. I guess I'm just concerned that normal break times, whether they leave the campus or not, we expect them to take to get lunch in and what have you. And yes, sometimes it doesn't happen, in which case I have no problem. But, I don't think that we should allow this to become just a normal expectation that, the 45 hours, you automatically get 5 hours of comp time. Because I don't think that's necessarily always true or necessary.
Senator Rust.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two questions. One is more straightforward than the other, but is comp time ever monetized? I know in the main, comp time has to be used by December 31st for whatever was used, whatever was earned during that year, regardless of any system under which it was earned. But is there any time where it is taken into consideration, for example, when someone is moving on to other employment? Is comp time ever monetized, or is it only sick leave and vacation time? That's one question, which I think is probably more straightforward. The other one is, I don't think on our job descriptions, when we make a posting, that we say, not only, and I do think we say, not only will you be expected to work more than 80 hours of pay period, you will not get paid for a portion of that. Please note that up to 5 or 6 hours in a pay period beyond 80, you will receive no pay. You will be working without being paid. And I think that it is described as unpaid work. And I just wonder if we're that straightforward in our postings to let people know not only will they be expected to work more on occasion because of conference committees or special session or something or other, but that they should have no expectation for being paid for the first 5 hours of that in any pay period. I don't think we do that. And if we think about doing it, it gets to be, I would think it gets to be a point of discomfort to say, we want you to work 10 hours a month and not get paid for it in any kind of way, not only in money, but in compensatory time. That's what makes me uncomfortable about not recognizing any time beyond the pay period that you have to put down and account for, which is 80 hours. That causes me a bit of discomfort, and maybe we should just say it on our job descriptions when we're hiring. Not only will there will be, time beyond 80 hours that staff is expected to work, but won't get remuneration for it until for the first 5 hours of that 80-hour period. Thank you. And it's not a comfortable question, and I don't really know the answer to it, but it seems like to me that we have a duty to be more transparent.
I'll go to Secretary Ludeman. Part of it, I think, is a salaried employee versus an hourly employee. But Secretary Ludeman, and then I know Ms. Minor had maybe something she wanted to add to, but Secretary Ludeman.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. And Senator Rest, the first question, that's probably the one Ms. Minor was going to answer, but no, there is no monetary value to compensatory time, either in payouts or any other time. It has no value other than 1 hour of your time to be spent wherever you want. That second question or comment leads us to what you said, Mr. Chairman. This is the difference between salaried and we never say this is an hourly position. It's a salaried position. It's advertised as an annual salary. I'm going to defer to Nicole if she has anything else to say in that regard. But is there conversation about hours? I mean, you've heard many times the words other duties as assigned. That doesn't mean other time as assigned, I suppose. You could argue, but the salaried employee usually understands and should, and maybe we should be more explicit about that, Senator Rest, at the very beginning, that would include other duties as assigned that may take more than 8 hours a day. Certainly, most people that understand a legislature and a legislative session understand that there are times when that is certainly more than 40 hours a week, but how to deal with that. Casual is actually an HR term. I used to work for short periods of time and I was paid for casual labor, but I was paid for that casual labor. I'm not saying these are casual 5 hours, but they're not. Senator Marty, you've identified 5 hours that we're trying to give more definition to. There's no doubt about it, but I tend to agree that we should keep salaried employees salaried. We're not FSLA. Every Senate employee on that roster is paid more than the threshold of FSLA exempt employees. So all employees, if we were under FSLA, would be exempt. And so we are not under any legal obligation to do that. No one, Senator Marty or Senator Rest or anybody's not saying that. They're saying we have a policy in front of us that we have charge of. But I'm certainly comfortable the way it's working now. I've talked to our controller, Ms. Myers, about the words work not paid. I don't know if it's the words that bother people the most. I have a feeling it certainly triggers the discomfort. Professional services provided. PSP, I don't know, maybe that, and that would be unpaid. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Ludeman. Ms. Minor, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And thank you, Senator Rest, for your recommendation. I have come with a history where we did actually put hourly or salaried on the job postings. That's definitely something we can add to our Senate postings, and we will. We do talk about the longer hours and the ability to earn additional paid time off, but we can certainly be clearer on that. We can also talk a little bit more thoroughly in our new employee orientation, because I do feel the benefit of being salaried employees goes the other way as well. When the work is done, if you're done after 6 hours, you can leave for the day because maybe you put in a couple of hours or some time the week before. But again, we describe that in the policy book that it's not hour for hour. And so I feel like it's a real benefit to be salaried employees as well on the interim. So thank you though for that suggestion, and we'll take a look at it.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Secretary Ludeman, you're right. The work not paid language triggers people to point, but it is accurate because it is work that's not being compensated. And as far as people who may be counting some time where they're really not working and counting it as work time, I mean, I think that's going to happen regardless of what we do. If employees are going to, as you said, there's a lot of level of trust here. But I also think that if somebody, I think late in the session, we're all aware how many times, well, we're recessing committee until call of the chair, which we expect in 2 hours. And there's some sitting around then. Usually they're working on work that they're behind on otherwise, but we are restricting them here. And again, I think, yes, we, under federal standards, we would be allowed to call these folks salaried employees, but I think the reality is a lot of them, we're not paying wonderful wages to some very hardworking people here. We're paying less than wonderful wages, and a lot of them are struggling. I mean, $40,000, $50,000 a year is not high pay. And the idea that we are then telling them, well, yes, we're generally going to give you compensation time. So the fact that these months of the year, you're going to be putting in long hours at sometimes inconvenient times and everything else, but you'll get compensated for that and being able to have lesser time the rest of the year, which, as Senator Weber pointed out, that our work, or Senator Bach, I guess, did earlier, that our work day is expected to be longer during, or be in the office longer during the session. I think that all says to this, it's a fairness thing, but to these employees, I just think it's unreasonable to say you should give us 5 hours of pay period before you start getting any compensation in return. And I recognize, as Secretary Ludeman said, it used to be 2 to 1 and then 1.5 to 1 and so on. We're not asking for time and a half in comp time. We're asking for just a level amount. And I think it is a fairness matter. So I hope we can adopt this. I'd like to move that. And but I welcome more feedback on it, because I think I feel differently about this for the employees at the top end. Not that they don't deserve it as much, but they understand that the pay and other things may be given to them in other ways. And those who are largely doing some very important professional work and are being told, well, you're going to get paid for 40, and then you have, well, every 2-week period, you have 5 hours that you're not going to get paid for, and then you can start compensating time. I think it's time to take the last step and make it 1-for-1 for anything over the 40 hours.
Mr. Ludeman or Ms. Minor, does anyone know when the current policy was adopted? How long it's been in place?
Yes, Mr. Chair, the current policy changed to 85 hours in 2014.
Okay.
And the cap, Ms. Chairman, and the cap was just raised 2 years ago, I think, from 200 to 220. But that's a different issue, the cap of comp time.
So, Senator Marty, I'm certainly open to it. My understanding is this is something that would have to be done before the beginning of the next session, because this time isn't accumulated during the interim. What I would recommend is we continue the discussion. One of the concerns I have is it for all salaried employees or just certain? I mean, you brought up some towards the top versus others making less. I would prefer that we continue the discussion and try to get this right rather than vote on it today. But I guess it's up to you if you want to. It's up to you if you want to offer it as a,
sure.
as a motion.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things. One, in terms of the higher end, I'm not trying to say we should not give it for them as well. I'm just saying the reason for the concern is that we have a lot of not well compensated, hardworking professional people here. And this seems a matter of fairness to them. If the committee felt more appropriate that, well, people only under a certain range would get that benefit and others would not, I'm certainly open to that, because I think the level of concern is greatest for those. Again, 2/3 of our employees are roughly under 70,000. And that's just arbitrary number I'm picking out, but it seems to me worth pursuing. I recognize, as you say, Mr. Chairman, that this isn't going to change things until next year if we change the policy today. I guess I want a sense of the committee. Is there a chance? I mean, if I postpone pushing this today, I mean, how open are people to this? Is this something that, well, maybe we can work out something and maybe people are comfortable saying for lower end folks or not? Because I think I just don't think it's fair to the employees to be in this spot. And I believe there are a lot of them who would like to see this changed. And so anyway, I'll leave it for a little more feedback. And Nick's got his hand up, I see.
Senator Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Marty. Just my 2 cents, but given the labor market, given the outstanding staff we have, I would support the way Senator Marty's got it. That's just the opinion of one member of the Rules Committee, and I'm happy to discuss it further, but if it was put to a vote now, I would be a yes vote. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Senator Marty.
Senator Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So maybe Secretary Ludeman knows this, but if you're working within the fair labor standards, when does your overtime start clicking on? Is it hour one after you work a 40-hour week? Is that typically what the baseline is? Because on something like this, all of a sudden you're getting your comp time then. That would trigger your comp time accumulation at hour 80 or 81. Is that correct?
Secretary Ludeman or Ms. Minor?
No, well, yes, I think FSLA is any hour over 40 hours is compensated, with the overtime pay. Mm-hmm. I believe that's correct.
I know, Mr. Chairman, there are some occupations, and maybe it's in agriculture where overtime doesn't actually accrue until after 48 hours. So I don't think it's 40 for everybody.
Right, but again, that's hourly and not salaried, if I understand that correctly. Ms. Minor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we'd have to do a class study for each position and to determine if they were actually hourly or if they would continue to be exempt. And then Senator Bodden, you're right, Bach, you're right, that we would look at different rules for different positions depending on the work that they do. But it wouldn't be just after 40 hours. There would be maybe after 8 hours or, the exempt employees in the executive branch have different things in their bargaining agreements that are above the law and allow after 80 hours. So there's a lot of things we need to look at with each position.
Do we know what other go ahead, Mark. Senator Johnson.
Oh, no, Mr. Chairman. So I know that this is different. This is the exempt employee side and this is salary, but because they're kind of getting blended together in a lot of people's minds, I just want to know how does this play out in a normal hourly work contract situation as compared to the salary? Because I know there are some differences there on when it clicks in, much like the current policy that we have. And so I was just curious about how, if these types of employees are staff, if they would fall more in the line of, automatically getting what would be in an hourly setting, maybe that overtime or that time and a half, whatever it is, what that would be, if it's comparable to what we're doing right now. So that's just trying to get some clarity because I'm still struggling with the details on this, but it sounds like we need to work on it.
Do we know what other states do? Other state legislatures? No.
Mr. Chairman, I do believe that the House of Representatives in Minnesota does this a little differently, right? It's another legislative body. I don't know all the details, how they do it. And of course, I'd prefer the Senate be the Senate and be the will of whatever the Rules Committee wants it to be. But we could do a little more investigation about that. That might be useful for a further conversation, if that's of use.
It would certainly be helpful for me. Senator Rest?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was going to be my question too to Senator Marty. I understand and agree absolutely on the premise that work should be paid for. But how we go about doing that, I wonder if it would be helpful to us to get more information from other states. And Secretary Ludeman, I'm not afraid of looking at what the House does, but
I understand.
But it might make us feel more comfortable about making any kind of change that that we're right in the middle of it, that we're not being we're not an outlier, that we want to make our job descriptions and postings accurate and not just vague expectations, and that maybe we have some language issues to work through as well. And I was taken earlier, Senator Miller, Mr. Chairman, when you said that we do have some time here to consider and make a change, because comp time right now is being used, but it's not being earned. And I don't know that maybe we would decide it should be retroactive, but that's not part of the motion that, as I understand it, that Senator Marty is making. He is not saying make it retroactive and going back to January and finding out all those times, 80-hour periods where people worked 85. He was saying it about moving forward. So if that's the case, we already have our comp hour systems in place, and we have some time. And I would support Senator Marty's motion, but we have some time, as you said, often enough to get it right. And I just wonder, Senator Marty, how you'd feel about that. And I would be open to it myself.
I'll go to Senator Marty, then Senator Bach. Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, what Senator Rest was saying is about what I was feeling as well. I'm hearing from people some openness to it, but also we want more information. I think Ms. Miner mentioned a few minutes ago that I think she said that a lot of the state employee contracts have this kind of arrangement in them for salaried employees where they work out things like this. To me, I do think it's a fairness issue. I think it's important to have, and not suggesting we change our folks from salaried to hourly. I mean, that reads a whole lot of new complications and so on. And I think that this is something, as we work it out, figure out what other states, what others are doing. But to me, this, in Senator Johnson's thing, when he pointed out that the Federal Labor Standards Act requires, I think it's time and a half at 40 hours. We're not asking for extra. We're asking just for the 1-for-1. But I'm open to putting it. I won't push it today. I would like a chance to have us discuss it and vote on it sometime before we get to the next session, because that's when it's going to happen. And again, next year's a bigger year because it's tends to be longer hours. It's the long session, so it would have more of an impact then. But I would be glad to, after we have just any other comments like Senator Box, just I will set it aside, but intend to bring it up at a later meeting in the interim then.
Very good. Senator Bach.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me just suggest, I'm sure MCSL has some information that they've compiled on this issue. We're not the first body that's looked at this, I'm sure. So it'd be interesting to see what process other state legislatures, other bodies use. I'm sure they've got it. That's part of the reason we pay dues to them, is to be able to get information from them. And we pay a lot of dues to them.
All right. Any other discussion on this topic?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the discussion. I think it's helpful. I do think it's a matter of fairness to the employees. I hope we can make this change later in the year, but I will lay over, I will not make the motion right now. I will hold that till a later time. Thank you.
All right, members, any other business? I think unless somebody chimes in, I think that completes our agenda for the day. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of the interim and the rest of the summer. And if and when we have another hearing, we'll certainly provide advance notice. Just be ready for that in the next week or two to review that policy. But with that, the committee is adjourned.
Aye.